Welcome, everyone, to this wonderful webinar, Consciousness Meets Quantum Physics, with Dr. John Hagelin, world-renowned quantum physicist and expert on higher states of consciousness. My name is Karen, and it's my great joy to host this session today. Before we get started, just note that we do have closed captioning available, so you can click CC on your screen if you'd like to use that. All right, so first off, we are coming live from Maharishi International University. We are an accredited nonprofit university, accredited by the Higher Learning Commission. And this is meant to be interactive, but because of our high numbers, we're going to be curating this a little bit. But we want you to know about two ways to get in touch with us or to ask questions and participate. So there's an open chat line, and those questions feed up to us as the hosts. So if there's any strong question as we go along, you can put that in and we'll keep note of them. And we also have a Q&A function, and that's because we also have our admissions counselor, Teresa Frost, here as well. So she's going to pop her video on so you can get a look at who she is. She's one of our admissions counselors. So if you have specific questions about an admission date or financial aid, she can answer those questions. The handy thing about the Q&A is when we answer the question, it goes out to everybody. So it's a really nice, quick way to benefit everybody. So thanks, Teresa. It's good to have you here. All right. So our university has this tagline, Home of Consciousness-Based Education. And we're going to be unpacking that with Dr. John Hagelin. So really what we're doing today is exploring one of the most fundamental questions in science and human experience. What is consciousness and how does it relate to the physical universe? We want to know, is it something generated by the brain? Or is it a deeper dimension of nature? Is there a framework that unifies both perspectives? So at Maharishi International University, this question shapes how we understand education, how we view human potential, and even our relationship with the laws of nature. So we're especially honored to be joined by Dr. John Hagelin, and I'm going to give a full introduction a little bit later, but first, there are wonderful features about our community, and you can see that over time, consciousness was fundamental, and yet that naturally extends to thinking holistically about life. This is why you see emphasis on natural health, fresh organic meals, innovative sustainability. But let's just explore the fundamental educational paradigm of this university. So we want to introduce you to Dr. John Hagelin, and this is his website. And I'm going to go right from here to tell you who he is, if you don't know him already. So Dr. John Hagelin received his AB Summa Cum Laude from Dartmouth and his PhD in physics from Harvard. And he conducted groundbreaking research at CERN, so that's the European Center for Particle Physics, and the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, leading to breakthrough publications in particle physics, astrophysics, and cosmology. And for the last 25 years, he's led foundational research on human consciousness, showing that meditation can accelerate brain development, create higher states of consciousness, and through collective meditation practice, substantially reduce crime and violence throughout society, even in war-torn areas. He is President Emeritus and Distinguished Professor of Physics at Maharishi International University, and he's also the International President of the Global Union of Scientists for Peace. In addition, as author of Manual for a Perfect Government and 2000 U.S. presidential nominee of the Reform Party and Natural Law Party, he's advanced evidence-based sustainable solutions to benefit all areas of government and society. So we invite you to check out his website a little bit later and keep up with his speaking engagements. But for now, we're so excited to bring him here with us. So Dr. Hagelin, please tell us, what is consciousness-based education, and what is the relationship between consciousness and the universe?
Thank you very much, and I'm really, really delighted to be here. I'm extremely encouraged by the responses to the polls. This is clearly a new age emerging, a new generation emerging, because when I was a little younger, the idea that consciousness was anything but a byproduct of the meat we call the brain was kind of unheard of. But we're talking now to a more spiritual generation, I would think a more curious generation, where the idea that we're just, biological material and everything just comes out of the biology or chemistry of the brain is no longer really holding sway. I can tell based on your poll, and that's great. That's remarkable. That's a significant change. Even in science, that change is beginning to happen. Even among crusty physicists who tend to be very physical, very material in their orientation, are realizing that the old concept doesn't work. Consciousness really can't, and you can prove this mathematically, consciousness really can't emerge from the flesh we call the brain. And my current focus in physics these days and current publications really have to do with where does consciousness come from. But I'm going to start with some basics and about MIU and about consciousness. So yes, warm welcome. Very happy to be with this group, quite an advanced, enlightened group from the sound of it. So today, the real cutting edge discoveries in physics in particular are shedding a totally new light on the nature, first of all, of reality, and as a consequence, on the nature of consciousness. So let's start briefly with the discussion of physical reality, the structure of physical reality. Physical reality sort of began with Newton. That's the basic classical physics of material objects. So that outer world that we see with our senses, the world of our senses, the world of our physical bodies, the world of matter, which we're surrounded by, and I think is pretty much the only direct experience people have because we experience through our senses. And of course, we think and cogitate with our minds, but we're experiencing the world as the physical stuff that it is. But that physical stuff of matter is only the surface crust of existence, because we all know on this call to some degree that behind that physical matter is our worlds within worlds within worlds. There's the world of molecules that make up our cells in our body. So we have our physical body, we have the cells within our body, which are too small to see except through a microscope. We have the molecules that make up the cells in our body, which are far smaller than you can see with anything but a very sophisticated microscope. And then you have the atoms that make up the molecules and the cells. And the atoms themselves are made up of nuclear particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons. And there are subnuclear levels as well. And as physics has begun to probe deeper and deeper levels of reality, we have discovered not only that there are layers within layers of reality, the surface, outer skin of the onion, and the different layers of the onion, each are radically different from each other. These different worlds within us, the different levels of physics, if you wish, within us, all have their own logic, their own language, their own mathematics. You can't understand an atom at all with classical physics. You need something called quantum mechanics. To understand the nucleus, you need something called quantum field theory. To go beyond that, you need something called unified field theory. So our senses really present to us an illusion of the physicality of the world, the physical body, the physical environment, the physical planet Earth. And that is one level of reality, but it's just the surface crust of reality. So at the deepest level of nature, beyond the molecular, beyond the atomic, beyond the nuclear, beyond the subatomic particles, there is, we now know, a universal, a unified field of nature's intelligence. And it's called the superstring field or unified field. There are several names that are used for that transcendental, I would say, reality, which is beyond physicality, which is even beyond what we call mind and intellect. There's a source to the universe. And the universe emerged from this source, which we call the unified field. The universe emerged from this field of absolute unity, this field of absolute subtlety, this abstract field of, it's not matter, abstract field of, let's call it intelligence. From that abstract, universal, eternal field of intelligence, the universe emerged at the time of the Big Bang. And spoiler alert, we're not the only universe. Universes percolate from this transcendental reality like popcorn or like ginger ale effervesces bubbles. But that gets a little beyond the scope of the talk. The important thing is that what we can verify scientifically, because we can't see these other universes if they exist, what we can verify through science is that there is this universal, unified field of nature's intelligence from which the fundamental particles emerge. From the fundamental particles come the nuclei and the atoms and the molecules and the people and the planets come out of that at the time of the Big Bang. So that reality of the unified field, field of pure existence, pure intelligence, pure being, is now the structure we understand about physical nature and the origin of the universe. But what about us humans? Well, we're part of nature. We share the same structure as nature. We have a physical body, we have a molecular level, we have a cellular level first, made of molecules, made of atoms, made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. The protons and neutrons are made of quarks, and ultimately everything, all these fundamental particles emerge from this ocean of pure existence, pure intelligence. And that intelligence at the foundation of nature, that abstract field at the foundation of nature, is highly intelligent because it's the laws governing that fundamental unity of life that bring forth all the order and structure of the universe, including human beings, all emerge from that ocean of pure intelligence governed by mathematics that we now understand, the mathematics of string theory and M theory. But the point is, there's an ocean of pure existence, pure being at the foundation of everything. It was there before this universe emerged, and it'll be there once this universe ceases to be in another 18 billion years or so. So don't hold your breath. So anyway, our bodies are structured in that same way. We have the physical body made of physical matter, physical brain made of physical matter. So, and not only is our body structured in the same way, our mind is structured in this same way as well. Our mind, our senses are dominated by our outer perceptions because our senses can only see what they can see. They can only see so small and not smaller. So because our senses can only bring to our mind and awareness the physical world, then our life is very much dominated by that physical world. And our focus is almost entirely on the physical world, which is accomplishing physical things and so forth. But so the mind again is structured in the same way. The mind has its outwardly direction activity focused on practicalities, focused on the physical world, our physical needs. And we call this activity surface mind, surface thoughts, surface thoughts. Oh, I left the car running. The sort of chatter that fills our mind all day long. And that's because our mind is constantly being bombarded by information brought to us from our senses, and our senses are completely concerned about, absorbed in the physical world. But our mind can go much subtler than our senses. In addition to these very concrete thoughts, we have the ability as human beings for abstract reasoning, entertaining concepts that are bigger, more abstract, more sublime. In addition to our ability for abstract reasoning, we also have the even subtler ability, the mind, for the finest feelings and the most subtle emotions, as well as the most expansive and abstract and powerful ideas, the world-changing ideas, all come from these very, very deep levels of mind, subtle, expansive, and profound. And beyond the finest activity of the mind is consciousness. Consciousness is the liveliness of experience that allows us to experience, to know, to think anything. Without consciousness, we are nothing. In fact, I go so far as to say that we are our consciousness. Now, because we're not necessarily aware of consciousness itself, but instead the consciousness that we fundamentally are, is instead aware of pretty much everything else but consciousness, our consciousness is pretty much absorbed all day long in outer stuff. But it's a kind of a tragedy of waking consciousness, that consciousness that we are our consciousness. That's the point. You are your consciousness. Yes, you have a body, and that's important. And you have the senses, which are helpful. You have the active mind, which is very practical. But the body is not the knower. The mind is not the knower. It's your the mind thinks, yes, but it's your consciousness that sees, that observes, that witnesses all that activity. Your consciousness is your core wakefulness, without which you're not there. So ultimately, we are our consciousness, and consciousness is beyond the body, beyond the senses, beyond the mind, and behind the mind is consciousness. It's a key point. You are your consciousness. But then what is that consciousness? Well, at the foundation of the physical body is the unified field. At the foundation of all matter is the unified field. Unified field is the basis of everything. It's at the basis of our mind. Our consciousness, especially we can see this after we've had the direct experience of consciousness more clearly. Our consciousness is ultimately, as is everything else, the unified field. Now, the unified field, before the emergence of the universe, or the unified field even now, at the very foundation of creation, beyond the outer physical, beyond the atom, beyond the subtlest impulses, is just universal being, universal existence, universal intelligence. That field of universal intelligence is not dead. It's not unintelligent. I mean, the laws of mathematics that govern this field are highly, highly intelligent, immensely sophisticated, dazzlingly brilliant. It's amazing, the structure of the unified field. But that unified field that gave birth to creation is what we experience as consciousness. At the source of the universe is consciousness. And it's the consciousness, when funneled through a human nervous system, becomes very personal, becomes very individual. It's our consciousness. But ultimately, the consciousness is all there is. Everything is just the unified field and its manifest activity. So when we experience consciousness, and we'll talk about that in a moment, if we can get the mind to just shut up, and that's hard to do. It actually takes a little bit of training, not a lot, to get the mind to just stop and be. When the mind settles completely to experience absolute silence, all you're left with is your consciousness. And that consciousness is unbounded, pure being, infinitely peaceful, intrinsically blissful, absolutely content. And it's a shame we don't have easy access to that, or at least most people probably don't have don't know how to access that. Because we don't have access to that, the mind, since our childhood, has grown up to be completely absorbed in outer activity and outer action, thinking and acting, and observing through our senses, so that we, in a sense, have forgotten what we fundamentally are, which is our consciousness, which is huge and it's expansive and it's intrinsically it's just fulfillment. It's just absolute bliss. So, okay, our minds are designed with the ability to do this, but our upbringing and our training have not really allowed us to take a moment here and there to just open the awareness to that fundamental nature of yourself, which is your consciousness, which is the you inside of you, which is incredibly precious, which is not to be missed, and yet it is missed, I think, by most people, even throughout their lives. So, in conclusion, I'll wrap up with a few maybe practical points. We are our consciousness. Our consciousness is fundamentally who we are. It's what we are. And the nature of that consciousness is unbounded. It's absolute contentment. It is absolute bliss. And it's a tremendous refreshment to just dive in, even for a minute, and then come out back into your outer experience and experience the energy and the bliss and the clarity that comes with that. So, what's a little tragic about humans is we generally lack from our education, lacking some direct training in the simple and age-old techniques now that have been strongly endorsed by the American Medical Association and endorsed by the American College of Cardiology and endorsed by the American Medical Association. As a technique, we call it transcendental meditation in this point in history. It's been around, but in today's age, it's called transcendental meditation, of opening the mind to our true self. And that turns out to be such a state of profound refreshment and deep rest for the body, much deeper than sleep, because you're completely settled, that heart health, that stress basically, first and foremost, dissolves. And with less stress, there's less disease. Every category of disease is markedly improved just by transcending. But heart health in particular, the world's number one killer, has been studied extensively. And this moment of profound rest, much deeper than sleep, is a tremendous stress buster, which sometimes college can be a little stressful. Sometimes life can be a little stressful. And just having a way for the body to just blow off that stress is very helpful. But in addition to improvements of physical health, the improvements in the functioning of the brain, the orderliness of brain functioning, the coherence of the brain, the clarity of the brain, the clarity of speech and action as a consequence of the clarity of the brain, increase in IQ, substantial increase in IQ. It's a new breakthrough in education. IQ has been traditionally thought something that doesn't change in life. You're kind of stuck with it. But it's not true. As long as we can exercise the brain effortlessly in a way that provides profound brainwave coherence during that meditation process and after the meditation process, that orderly brain functioning translates directly into intelligence, IQ, academic performance, learning ability, executive functioning in your professional careers. So there's really incredible practical benefits for developing your brain, developing your mind in this way, developing the heart as well. But, and then that's now, again, Nature magazine just came out with this, and all those organizations in charge of health in the United States and other countries are starting to say transcendental meditation is the unique stress-reducing practice that actually has this profound impact on heart health and many of these other things. So MIU is all about the full development of the human being. And MIU offers to all of our students, and these are simple practices, very natural, very effortless, age-old practices that come from this tradition called yoga. Yoga is widely known as yoga asanas, or maybe pranayama, but real yoga in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are fundamentally about meditation. And those meditation techniques are discussed in the Yoga Sutras, but unfortunately not with enough clarity that you really can just read that book and try to practice it. Yet it is extremely easily learned from a teacher and there are teachers all over the world and the US. But at MIU, the students have direct access to learning in their first weeks of being here, and they start to grow in intelligence and creativity and happiness and expanded consciousness. The expansion of awareness is the main thing. With expanded reality, expanded practice, expanded understanding, then nature starts to fall together and become understandable at its deepest levels. So, one of the unique things about our very, very friendly environment here, where there's, a great deal of camaraderie among students and just harmony with faculty and relationships with faculty are really good. Whether you're online or here in person, you would find at MIU an incredible friendliness and empathy that comes from the fact that everyone here experiences the reality, directly experiences the reality that we are all one. I mean, that pure ocean of consciousness at the basis of me, at the basis of my desk, at the basis of planet Earth, is the basis of all of us. So this more unified understanding, this more empathetic and recognition in everybody as essentially being a reflection of their own self just brings a harmony and a peace that the world desperately needs today. And I wish we were a much, much bigger university because if you look at the news right now, I don't think it could get much worse. So in any case, we really need expansion of consciousness everywhere, but for students who are young in life and have an opportunity to really develop their full potential and their profound understanding of reality and living the benefits of that, that's what MIU is about. MIU is about. So it takes just, some weeks and longer of effortless. From the beginning, it's effortless. From the beginning, it's very sweet. From the beginning, it provides relief. But over time, the efficiency and depth of experience and clarity of experience of one's own internal, blissful, true inner nature, one's own being, one's self with a capital S. I can't think of anything, frankly, that has as profound an impact on everything in life, one's happiness, one's health, one's intelligence, one's effortless success, more success in whatever we do, that you get here automatically as part of your education. I'm going to stop there. I suspect there will be wonderful questions, and any question is a wonderful question. I'm very keen to hear what you might want to talk about and see if I can provide any additional insights. Thank you.
Yes, and then people are saying thank you for an excellent introduction. And I think that there's a couple different questions I can bundle together. So some people are wondering about the distinction between mind and consciousness, but also is consciousness linked to love and power? So maybe you could talk a little also about what's consciousness and what are the properties of consciousness, and also distinguish it from mind. So,
Okay,
okay.
so when the mind settles, how do I put this? When the mind is sharply focused on the specific localized details of whatever it is, your hands, your hairbrush, your consciousness is very localized. Close your eyes and let the mind settle a little bit, your awareness begins to expand to less restrictive, less pointed objects and more expansive thoughts and feelings. Find feelings are very expansive and very, very subtle. And being very subtle and very expansive, the mind is not so tightly narrow in its focus. And if you can allow that focus to continue to settle down so that the object of experience, even if it's a faint thought or even a fine feeling, if you let that fade to nil, you're left with purely consciousness. So let's think of consciousness as the silent ocean, and think of feelings as very faint, broad waves on the surface of that ocean. And think of more complex thoughts as a more tightly woven, more active set of surface waves. And your words and expressions are even more complicated and detailed fluctuations. So it's thoughts are fluctuations of consciousness. Feelings are subtler, more intimate fluctuations of oneself, of one's consciousness. Outer perceptions is a very, very specific and bound experience of consciousness, very localized to the senses on particular objects. So Consciousness is the foundation. Intellect, intellect and feelings are the first to emerge. More surface mind, surface thoughts then emerge after that. One's senses emerge from there. One's body, one's outer environment emerge from there. So it's all layers of one unified field. Think of it as an ocean. From that ocean can come the subtlest, most expansive waves, fine feelings, more specifically articulated thoughts are just more choppy, have more shape to them. And ultimately, I guess the ocean could rise in droplets of water. And so the more dynamic and concrete the expressions of the field are, the more they resemble physical matter. So it's all one unified field. It's just whether the field is at rest before the universe even emerges, billions of years of silence, and through a process that's quite interesting but complicated to explain, through a process that gave rise to the Big Bang, then the waves and dynamism of the ocean emerge, and the whole universe emerges. And that universe has its origin in the unified field, as do we, as does everything. But as human beings, we're very fortunate because we can actually experience that unity inside as our consciousness in its completely expanded state. We can actually become one with that intelligence that gave birth to the universe. I hope that helps a bit.
I think so. I think there's also this interesting breakdown of the fine feeling level. Is that where love might be then? Is that
Absolutely. Love is a tender, tender feeling on the level of emotion, very, very close to that universal ocean. Sometimes even people describe that universal ocean as love or an ocean of love. And the fact that we have the ability to touch that level with our minds and hearts means that we can express that love in our outer lives and richer in love at every stage of one's human development. Animals have some love, typically for their offspring, and it's love. It's rather localized and not as expansive and subtle as human beings, but love is fundamental to life, and I think, some people would say, more poetic people might say that that universal field is a field of love.
all right? So I think that's a really good journey through consciousness, and we can get the flavors through your talk. Now we're understanding, consciousness in our university is fundamental, meaning that everyone learns a technique to access it. I think we want to also now shift towards how does that affect the discipline that you're saying? Some people are bringing up psychology. Like, what if you integrate consciousness into psychology? But we want to address that one, but also broader. Like, how does this educational philosophy affect the whole educational process? And why is it important to people not studying physics? Perhaps that would be, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If physics, yes, this unified field happens to be the foundation of physics today. Physics is a fortunate subject in the sense that they've been able to go so deep that they've actually ended up at that unified field. But honestly, every discipline is the product of somebody's creative mind, or many people's creative mind. And, mind begins with being. Any thought that emerges begins as a tender, faint impulse on that ocean of being. A tiny little bubble emerges and takes form. Thoughts actually emerge from there. They take a half a second or a second to actually develop into a audible thought. But all of our thoughts and ideas ultimately come from our consciousness. So whatever the discipline is, psychology, the arts, economics, computer science, AI, all of the all of the ideas that make up those disciplines emerged from consciousness. That person's consciousness, depending upon their focus, depending upon their interests. So all of these disciplines have emerged from consciousness. And amazingly, that means all disciplines have their source in the unified field, as reflected through this person and this nervous system, or that person and that nervous system. And what's amazing about MIU, when you go to another college, and I've been to many, the subjects are very compartmentalized so that, physicists would never talk to poets. Now, and vice versa. But when I was in Harvard, there was a new fad that was coming up, and it was a big deal that the universities are not producing well-rounded people. We need to have some interdisciplinary communication, some coordination, some sharing of the deep ideas of different disciplines. And for a while in physics, we were all kind of being taught to do poetry, which I was never good at. And so we all had to come up with a little poem about physics. I mean, now these poems were awful. The electron flitters and flutters like a butterfly. And it was just so superficial, but the goal was to see the interdisciplinary link of all knowledge. And no, if you want to go to find out the parallel between an apple tree and an orange tree, you've got to get all the way down to the trunk, to the root, and it's all coming from the nutrition in the soil and the water in the soil. So if you go to the source of any discipline, where the biggest ideas, the most profound and sweeping ideas are, and then on top of those big ideas, you have smaller practical applications of that ideas coming up in different ways. But all those disciplines begin in consciousness. And at MIU, we have two things. Number one, everybody is directly familiar with the experience of consciousness. So everyone already has within them the foundation of all disciplines, the knowledge of consciousness. So we already have a basis to understand any discipline. And more than that, though, we teach those connections at MIU, not on the surface of the orange and the apple, which are not the same, but you go down to the source of the discipline, and amazingly, you'll find the deepest principles of physics and philosophy and poetry and mathematics and computer science are all essentially emerging from that same source. They're connected at their source. So when we teach at MIU, we always spend a little time in every class to connect the lesson of the day, to connect the parts to the whole, to the wholeness of the discipline of physics, for example, the wholeness of the discipline of chemistry. And we connect that wholeness of the discipline to our own self, to universal consciousness. So you go to the cafeteria after morning class. You have all these students buzzing back and forth about their classes they took. And we're talking about physics students and physics and this and poetry and sustainable living. And they're all excitedly talking because they can share their own kind of breakthroughs in what they're studying. And everyone's really excited because they get it. They all are anchored in the source of every discipline. So the interdisciplinary foundation to everything, the interdisciplinary foundation to education, was really deeply steeped here. So we're not going to create a poem about an electron because that's such a superficial attempt to connect things on the surface level where they're very different. We can all go back to the source of the disciplines where we see very graphically and clearly how they all connect. Sorry for that long answer, but
Well,
I
you
think,
spoke to a really clear distinction here. There's like education that's compartmentalized,
yeah,
and you can almost see it in how the individual merges in a very siloed, fractured understanding of the universe. Whereas if you're from the beginning nurturing consciousness and actually developing it, you could have a rich conversation with someone from another discipline. And you're right. It's like I think it's always been the special thing about our community is the cafeteria. People speaking not only about glimpses of higher states of consciousness, but also where the disciplines align because they're fundamentally connecting with that source. So I think that was
very
very,
put, very well
yeah.
put.
Okay. Well, I mean, normally we wrap up after about 45 minutes. We're okay with going over if you're happy to go over maybe
Yeah.
a question or two. Yeah. Okay. Um, so we'll just go maybe over about 5 or 10 minutes. So this is bonus content. Amin, do you have a question you can toss us? We can go in the direction of higher states of consciousness. I was also thinking practically, when would be a good time to take your course in sort of the meditator journey? I would think that there is, you learn transcendental meditation, and it's quite something just to fathom the depths of your own reality. And then as someone progresses on that path, when would be a good time to start expanding their relationship, their understanding the relationship between the individual and the unified field? Seems like such a leap conceptually. Would you give any recommendations at all for when you would recommend, on a meditation journey, on your personal journey, when you start to put inner and outer reality together?
Well, that's a good question. I think the foundation of everything is the expansion of consciousness. We need to reawaken within ourselves the hardware we have, the very delicate, very sophisticated, very blessed, I would say, hardware, if you wish, of the human brain, so that we're really accessing our deeper potential. We have so much in our physiology, such a subtle capabilities in our physiology that are just asleep. And we start to reawaken the subtleties of our physiology, which expand our consciousness and bring really remarkable improvements in new capabilities. But even once you've started that, don't need to wait to begin to study something, for example, at MIU, the way courses are taught, where you're introduced, even at the very beginning, to the depth of a discipline. The depths of a discipline, even physics, are usually not offered at a college until maybe an advanced doctoral program or at least a master's graduate program. That's a terrible waste because if you maybe set aside the sometimes complicated mathematics of physics or chemistry, you can still understand this stuff beautifully and clearly without going through all of those complex steps, which will be useful if you pursue that subject, professionally. But you won't have time to do that. If you want to be an artist or an economist, you might be fascinated in the physics, but you don't want to take 10 years of it or 5 years of it in order to understand it. So at MIU, we provide the cutting edge of knowledge on day one so that everybody understands. So, wow, that's what physics is all about. I might be interested in doing that. Or, wow, that's what physics is all about. But it's not for me. I'd like to try something else. So it's good to provide the depth of knowledge from the beginning, but you don't have to go far in your experience of meditation to really start to be able to understand the depth of the subjects. So I would start TM as soon as you can, whether you're here or whether you're somewhere else. Of course, if you're online, and allow that growth to begin. And then if you happen to have an opportunity to take courses here, you'll really see wonderful practical applications of your expanding abilities to comprehend things deeply, because all of our courses take advantage of that capability. I don't know if that was a direct
That's
answer, but it
good.
was
No, that's
intended.
very good. Yeah. And I would say to people here asking how to integrate Dr. Hagelin's course, that would be something for your faculty advisor, and you want to create your degree plan and just make sure that you have that January. Is it January where you teach your physics
I
stuff?
teach it in person in January. I teach it online several times a year.
Okay, there you go. So yes. So if you're an undergraduate, you can talk to your faculty advisor about when to weave that in. Um, I think there's one other question we can maybe integrate at this time, and it looks like maybe some attention on AI, right? So the integrate that conversation into also the higher states model. Could you talk about?
Yes, actually today it's a really important question because crazy things are happening in our government right now, where they are demanding that our AI companies provide them. The government's asking for this, the military is asking for this, to provide the technology to create AI robotic human killers, and also the AI robotic capability to conduct nuclear warfare. And so the technology is one thing, the knowledge is one thing. The intelligent use of such technology is critical. I'm afraid it seems like we kind of lack that right now. What we really need in the world is rising consciousness and a new generation of people whose vision is expanded and whose care and concern for the world and for the planet is more lively than it is in previous generations. Um, so you rephrase the question briefly and I'll just address it
Well,
directly.
so there's this higher states model of consciousness that you can really speak to, but then is there a way to address artificial intelligence within the
Yes.
framework?
So AI is not conscious. AI does not have consciousness, But AI is incredibly competent at emulating patterns of behavior, at emulating human speech, at being able to brilliantly summarize and paraphrase human discoveries, to devour all the literature, the scientific literature, and be able to answer questions for you about your health that you would normally need a doctor for, or about a legal issue we'd normally need to hire a lawyer for. You need to take it with a grain of salt because it's not perfect, but it's getting close to perfect. And its ability to just imitate, recognize patterns using algorithms and to regurgitate knowledge and to do so with great skill, clarity, and even with personality, which they are also emulating. You can choose what personality you want. You want humorous, you want this, you want that, and it'll mimic those different types of personalities as well. But it's not conscious. It's built on digital technology, bits that are either on or off, one or zero, connected together by wires. And it's very mechanical. There's no subtlety to it at all. The reason the human being is consciousness is because the brain physiology is incredibly subtle and is insensitive and can pick up on things that are very, very much more refined than the ones and zeros that a regular computer are capable of. And if there were more time at a different, perhaps, meeting we could have someday, in addition to the universe we see, the universe of the particles we're all familiar with, or some of us are, and the forces of nature we know, like electromagnetism and gravity, four forces, and several types of particles make up the universe. We've just discovered that there is, in addition to the universe we see, and that the physicists know so well, there's actually what's called a hidden sector. We have the observable universe, but occupying our same space and even sharing our field, the force of gravity with us, there is a hidden sector world that, apart from gravity, has its own set of forces, not ours, but somehow slightly similar forces, and its own set of particles, and the subtlety of the mind, which makes it actually a far more sensitive and profound object, even than our physical brains, is in part because of the brain's link to the hidden sector world, where you have a far subtler form of matter, a far subtler mechanics. The hidden sector world is governed by quantum mechanics, not classical mechanics, which means is really tailored to what we call mind and consciousness. So I go way off course with this question, but the subtlety of what we call mind, spirit, soul is in part that it's not fundamentally based primarily in the physical world. Yes, physical, but not the coarse world that we live with, which is made of hard matter, but a quantum mechanics dominated world which surrounds us, called the hidden sector world. And that's the difference between, you could say, brain and mind. Brain and mind are not the same thing, intimately connected, but not the same thing. And that's a subject for a future time, I think, because it would really get into some.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that we need to have a whole other place to discuss the intricate mechanics here, the relationship between artificial intelligence and human nervous system and how that affects this journey towards higher states of consciousness. So yeah, let's just table it for now because otherwise we'll be
Yeah.
here forever. But someone did remark on the side, it does seem like you're linking, development of consciousness with humanity, actually. That's really what will.
Critical need, and never more critical in the history of civilization that human beings rise in their consciousness and their expanded awareness so that they don't do such narrowly self-centered and short-sighted things, because we have the technology to destroy not just ourselves, but life on the planet. And therefore, we have a new responsibility that's greater than ever.
Yeah, so to someone's question here, what can we do to help? It looks like developing your consciousness is the number one thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Yeah, you're the unit of world peace. So thank you so much for everyone's
my pleasure.
participation. And there's so many rich questions, and we will collect those and we can think of a future webinar with Dr. John Hagelin. But thank you so
Wonderful.
much for your time.
Truly my pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
So we're just going to do a couple closeouts, and you're welcome to look at the chat with all the thank yous. Okay, so here we go. So if you enjoyed our conversation today and want to be a part of our university in any way, just practically speaking, you can let's see if we have another one. Yeah, so you can apply anywhere through our website. It's a very simple application form. Our next entry is April 2026, which is just for all the online undergraduate programs. But in August, we'll have all programs available. In the previous slide, this one was about financial aid, just to say that it's most of our students get extensive financial aid, and there's a calculator that will estimate how much you would qualify for. And very important thing. So Dr. Hagelin mentioned today that your journey with developing consciousness starts with transcendental meditation. It's a very effective tool and method for systematically bringing the attention inwards towards the source of thought, where you can experience pure consciousness, the source of your own creative intelligence. And our whole community practices this technique. It's recommended to do 20 minutes twice a day. So it's a very easy way to integrate into your daily practice. And this is the foundation of our university, the direct experience and development of consciousness. So once you get accepted to our university, you can learn it for free at a local TM center near you, or come to Fairfield and we'll teach you here. So we're located in Fairfield, Iowa, southeast corner of Iowa, and you can consider being an on-campus student, but actually most of our students now are online. Still, we encourage you to come and visit us. There are 2 golden domes where you can meditate in a group. It's super blissful, and you can really experience the impact of meditating together. So we have future interactive webinars. So if you got a notice by email for this one, you'll likely get invited in the future. You could also come and visit us for Visitors Day, and these are Saturdays. The next one is April 4th. And you can also request a meeting with your professor. So if you want to continue to learn more about our approach to education, or even take continuing education classes, there's so many ways you can continue to educate yourself and grow knowledge. In the meantime, you're welcome to check out other webinars we've hosted, and we'd love to hear from you what other topics you'd like to hear hosted on these interactive webinars. So thank you so much for being a part of our conversation today. It was such a treat to have Dr. Hagelin, and we hope you have a wonderful weekend. All right, take care.